New file started.
Let's do the Dune.
My name is Shattered Maps. We're gonna do Dune tonight.
Actually, did you hear the Dune? It was kind of like we had a fun little talk last time, so I left it at the beginning.
Oh, the intro. Yeah, no, that was funny. Yeah, it's funny. I wonder how people liked it. All right, just let me know you're ready to go.
Oh, it's already started.
Oh,
Synthaholics.
welcome to Synthaholics. Thank you so much for downloading this episode. Today we are back at Dune. Today we have myself, Aaron O'Brien, and we have Dave Duncan. Hello, Dave.
Hi, can I spit on your desk? In a very respectful way.
Oh, if it's respectful, you can spit on my desk.
Okay. It's sharing water because this is very important on Dune.
Is that what you call swapping spit?
I guess they just spit on the desk and they get a stick and they mix it all up.
Yeah.
Shattered Maps comes in with a stick and she's mixed it up. So, yeah, I'm the spit mixer.
You know, they call her a well dipper because she does other things with her tongue, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, Shattered Mapes. I didn't know you swing that way.
He does.
Oh.
Well, guys,
Lady
we
Jessica
are...
better look out.
I've been assigned to this housekeeper.
I bet you have. So, last two chapters we had the attempt on Paul Atreides' life, and then we had Lady Jessica finding the conservatory and the hidden message about the traitor, and
A hidden massage?
the massage, and then Jessica and Paul get together and they exchange notes, and I was just
complex. And...
No. And then, Paul is taken by the guards to go see his father, Duke Leto. And this is where we pick up. Duke Leto is up in one of the parapets of the landing control outside Arakan, and he's just kind of like looking over everything, and he's just kind of lost in thought. Yeah, lost in thought and thinking about that the Harkonnens tried to kill his son. And this is something he repeats in this chapter, especially over and over again, that the Harkonnens tried to kill my son.
I will stick Shattered Mapes in their face until they die from it.
Yeah, so he's pretty upset by this whole thing. They're bringing Paul to him at this moment. So, but the Duke starts reflecting too as well that he's never going to see Kaladin again, his home, and that Arrakis is basically a hell to him,
But I have to put on a good face and make it so that my son will like this place, so because he's going to end up spending his whole life here. My life's mostly done.
My life's done. He's already kind of like thinking like I'm pretty much dead already. So
it's like he even knows it's coming.
Yeah, it really is. He's like he kind of is resigned to it. Just before Paul arrives, we get some of the soldiers being transported onto this planet, and they're kind of all shuffling into the base. And this is when the Duke walks in and he sees Gurney.
Gurney, I'm Patrick Stewart. I'm a robot now.
And Gurney is walking in with the troops, and then the Duke basically uses him and says, I need you to kind of talk to some of these spice miners that are leaving, and I want you to try to convince them to try to stay.
Not by slave labor, not by force, off from 20%.
Yeah. And he's like, and he's like, just know that the treasury is not limitless or bottomless or something like that.
Well,
you
no,
know?
because Gurney pushes back and is like, "Oh, Harkonnens gave them more than that. They're not going to want to like."
Right,
gonna,
exactly.
Like,
Want to stay on, right? Exactly. But
the conference or can be bottomless if you want my son to be destitute. You don't want that, do you?
Do you want that? No, sir, not at all.
No, sir. No, sir, of course not, sir.
No. So it's funny because Gurney must be like quite persuasive, because we're going to find out he didn't get obviously all of them to sign on, but a lot of them did. So
he's not as ugly. Maybe he's not ugly to the Dunesman. Maybe he's kind of handsome.
I don't think he's handsome. I think there's something charming about him. So
he sings them a song, whispers in their ear, gives them a little tug.
Right. Yeah. Touch up.
Sure, you can stay on here. Check this out. No, yes, I think I will.
Yeah. So he sends them off on that. And he also tells he wants like 300 of his soldiers, his best soldiers, to help Howit's men because of all their problems with the Harkonnens, and obviously they're trying to root out certain Harkonnen people that are still on the planet. So
he didn't take them all up and leave.
Yeah, some of them are still here apparently. What? So, yeah. So, and
is
so
it
yeah,
okay
so
to be racist against Harkonnens?
I guess it is. For here in the Dune world, it's okay to be racist.
Okay, that's good.
Not against skin color, against what house that you were born under.
Oh, boycott housing. That's good.
Yeah. So that's kind of like that chapter. It's a quick chapter, but it's mostly like the inner dialogue of the Duke. And then we jump now to a staff meeting that's going on that the Duke's holding, and he first starts. We kind of break in halfway in the conversation between the Duke and his son Paul, and they're talking about what transpired with the Hunter Seeker trying to take his life, and that Duke Leto is first thinking that he should get rid of Thufir Hawat, and it's like he's getting too old, he's messing up, and Paul's like, how many times has he messed up? Like, can you count how many times? And it's like, and just because of his training, I was able to dismantle the Hunter Seeker. So
he trained me well, Papa.
And he was kind of saying that that this Harkonnen attempt on his life was so simple that probably Thufir just kind of overlooked that idea.
It was so simple a caveman could do it.
So simple. A man in a clay pot could do it.
Oh, no.
Living in his own feces.
Yum, yum. Oh, that guy from last episode. That's great.
So, and then Thufir Hawat walks in, and he just wants to he wants to tender his resignation, and the Duke say, "Stop acting a fool." And he says, if you made a mistake, it was in overestimating the Harkonnens. Their simple minds came up with a simple trick, and we didn't count on simple tricks. And my son has been at great pains to point out to me that he came through this largely because of your training. You didn't fail here. So apparently the Duke changed his mind after talking to Paul.
What? Paul listened to me? This is the first time Paul's ever listened to me.
And then he asked him to bring Thufir's men in, and they all start just all the staff start walking in with at this big table that the Duke's ahead of. And this is Paul's first staff meeting he's been invited to.
They rod my staff. They comfort me.
So they start talking, and the Duke gives this like weird joke that I've read like 3-4 times, and I'm just not getting it. Maybe I'll read to you, Dave, and tell me if it's funny to you. He starts off the meeting saying, "Well, gentlemen, our civilization has appeared to have fallen so deeply into the habit of invasion that we can't even obey a simple order of the Imperium without old ways cropping up." And then it says, a dry chuckle sounded around the table, and Paul realized his father had said what the precisely correct thing and precisely the correct tone to lift the mood.
Well, you see, this joke is actually hilarious after you've read all 64 Dune books. And you know what the old way and the Imperium and the Order was.
And you've become so boring with Dune because that's all you know. You've lost all sense of humor.
Once you've become Henry Zabrowski. This will be funny to you. I want someone to. I think Marcus should read that quote to him, and I want to hear Henry laugh, because Henry probably knows what it all means. I do not know what this means, so it is not funny.
I've read it like 3 times when I was reading this chapter. I'm like, why is that funny?
Well, it's funny. It's I don't know. Even if with all the background, it might not be funny, but who knows? But I would assume it's built on all the background that we just don't know yet.
Do you ever have you ever been in like a meeting and like one of the higher ups like makes a joke and people chuckle and you're like, that wasn't funny?
Yeah, I'm sure it's been around. Although I'm usually the one trying to tell the jokes in the meeting and people look at me funny. Some people laugh.
Oh, so you're that guy?
Yeah,
you're the guy who just told that joke.
I've always been the class clown. No, I wouldn't tell that joke because that joke probably wasn't funny. I'm not in charge. If they laugh at me, then they thought it was actually funny.
I see.
I don't think anyone polite laughs at me. Maybe Holly.
Maybe.
So we forgot to mention she's been taken back to Bene Gesserit training this week.
Yeah, well, she got Bene Gesserit family in for the week.
Well, last week she denied being at Bene Gesserit training, but I think it was because she ran away. She didn't want us to know.
Yeah, people in Bene Gesserit school doesn't talk about being in Bene Gesserit school.
What happens? It's the first rule of Fight Club. I mean, Bene Gesserit school. You don't talk about Bene Gesserit school.
That's right. So, and then how it starts going into the economic reports, and I gotta say,
this is also hilarious.
There's a laugh track when you read along. This is a little
on the audiobook,
long.
yeah.
This is a little long. This is a little long to read, and it's a little dry, but there is a lot of information that's given here. So we go into a whole thing about. First, we get into Duncan, Idaho, talking how he's kind of made his way with the Fremen, and he's kind of like
best, like no one ever was.
It's right. He's a friend of the Fremen.
He's a Fremen Pokemon master. That's
right. They start talking about just basically that there's a lot of Fremen and probably more than we even know. So he says, because Paul asks in the middle of the meetings, like, how many Fremen are there? And how it answers from food processing and other evidence. Idaho estimates the cave complex he visited consisted of 10,000 people, all told. Their leader said that he ruled a siege of 2,000 hearths. We've reason to believe that there are a great many such siege communities. All seem to give their allegiance to someone called Leet. So we don't really know who Leet is, but there's some kind of leader within the Fremen community. And that was just one Fremen group that he was kind of embedded himself part of.
And there could be many, many Fremen groups. We just don't know. They're like ticks.
Right. Yeah, they're like ticks. Bed bugs. And then we get into, they start talking about smugglers. So there's apparently spice smugglers.
Han Solo, are you hanging around smuggling that spice?
So and we get into this whole thing that these smugglers the smugglers have redoubled their operations during this period of unrest. This deserves some careful thought. We shouldn't worry so much about unlicensed frigates working off our planet. It's always done. But to have them completely outside of observation, that's not good. And what he plans to do, he says, Gurney, I want you to head a delegation to these smugglers, an embassy, if you will, to contact these romantic businessmen and tell them I'll ignore their operations as long as they give a ducal tithe. And how it here estimates that the graft and extra fighting men therefore required in the operation have been costing them 4 times the amount. And then he also decides that he will also will bank an entire tithe in the name of Shaddam IV, the emperor. So out of that tithe that they're going to give, the smugglers are going to give the Duke's going to take a percentage of that and give it to the emperor. So, and it's still cheaper than the smugglers are used to operating. So this will be good for the smugglers, and the Duke kind of makes friends with them.
That's a good idea.
It's a good idea, and everyone's like, "Oh, well done there, sir. Very good, very good." Mm-hmm.
I will laugh at more jokes now. Ha, ha, ha. This is a joke, right?
So, and then we start talking, and says, let's talk about the accounting of the books. And then he says, what about he says, and Thufir says, the Harkonnens took 10 billion Solarises out of here every 330 standard days. So about every year, they took 10 billion Solarises. I don't know how much a Solaris is.
Is it like a yen, or it's like a penny?
So yeah.
It's probably worth more than that. I don't know.
No, I think it's probably like a lot of money. So, and
considering Frank Herbert was American, I'm assuming it's like $1.
Maybe.
I
10 billion doesn't seem a lot.
I don't know.
Maybe those are like $100,000 bills.
Oh, maybe.
Anyways, there was a muted gasp around the table, and people were like, "Wow,
oh my god,
that's a lot."
It's like $50 in yen.
$50. The exchange rate in Calden money, that's like $50.
Oh my gosh.
So there's a talk then about how they could use to try to get up to the levels the Harkonnens were milking out of the planet. They are not going to be able to achieve this because all the equipment that they have, their sand crawlers, harvesters, spice factories, supporting equipment, they're all in disrepair.
We don't have any to actually work. They're all going to be broken down by the end of the semester, so we're going to have to get them there. We're going to have to buy a bunch of new parts, too.
And less than half of them work. So, yeah, and by the time it's going to take them a whole year to even, like, refurbish some of these and get them up and running. So they're going to have these, like, really awful profit margins during this time. They're just not going to make any money.
So we're going to be in the red for the first 16 years until we're able to get things off the ground again. I was actually looking at a video on the economics of nuclear reactors. They take
reactors?
Yeah, they take a long time to pay off, but they do start making money after like 8 years or something like that. 8 or 16 years. It's a long time because they're expensive, but they make their money back eventually.
After a while, they make money. So like I said, everything's in disrepair. And it says, we'll be lucky to get half the equipment into operation and luckier to get a fourth of it still working 6 months from now. And Leto's like, say it's kind of what we expect to see, that what's going to happen. And then we get into, Gurney says, couldn't we get the guild to put up a frigate to do a weather satellite? So they can kind of like watch how the weather patterns are going on the planet. So maybe they can like tell there's a storm coming or whatever to get out of an area or to mine an area that's not having a storm. And apparently the Spacing Guild said the money would be too high. You wouldn't be able to pay for it.
You can't afford it.
And then one of the men at the table said, "There's no justice in this." And the Duke answers back and says, "Who asked for justice? We make our own justice. We make it here on Arrakis. Win or die. Do you regret casting your lot with us?" And the man like looked at him like, "No, sir.
No, I don't. No, not.
Tell me another bad joke." And
with the white the chicken across the sand.
But the Duke says, "Let's not rail about justice as long as we have arms and the freedom to use them. Do any of the rest of you harbor bitterness? If so, let it out. This is a friendly council where any man may speak his mind." So, and then Gurney answers back, "I think what rankles, sir, is that you've had no volunteers from the great houses. They have just you as Leto the Just and promised eternal friendship as long as they didn't cost them anything." So it's like all the houses of the Landsred are just like, "Yeah, we'd like to help, but I just can't seem to find the time."
Oh, we like you, but we just don't like you that much.
Yeah, well, that's exactly, and the Duke's like, they've grown very rich for doing very little, and you can't blame them. You can be angry at them, but you can't blame them for what comes easy to them.
Duke Leto the Dim.
So now Howard turns on a projector on the table surface, and it starts showing basically we get a kind of rundown on how everything works. So we get the this first bug-like body moving machine. It's a harvest factory.
It's the Dune for Dummies video. It's like, oh, this is what happens on Dune.
Right, and then we kind of get into this whole thing. Like, apparently, there's this old machine called Old Maria, and it belongs in a museum. And the Harkonnens would put people on there to punish their job because it's so old, it's always broken and doesn't work right. So if you're like a bad spice miner, they stick you on this thing. So it's like it's kind of
the Harkonnens. They're just so funny. They tell better jokes.
They probably do. And then Paul just asked, are sandworms big enough to swallow this whole thing whole? And then everyone got quiet at the table. And he says, and then Howard has to answer, there are worms in the deep desert that could take this entire factory in one gulp. It says up close to the shield walls where most of the spicing's done, there are plenty of worms that could cripple this factory and devour at leisure. And then Paul asks, why don't we shield them? And then Howard brings up is according to Duncan, Idaho, shields are dangerous in the desert. A body-sized shield will call every worm for hundreds of meters around. It appears to drive them into a killing frenzy. We've the Fremen word on this, and no reason to doubt it. Idaho saw no evidence of shield equipment on the siege, so they don't even use it. The Fremen don't use shield technology, and apparently
makes the worms angry.
Makes them pretty crazy. Yeah,
you wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Exactly. But they also say the Harkonnens definitely use shields. So there's repair places in every garrison village for shields. So there must be some way to work around it. And so there's this conjecture that maybe there's some way to nullify shields that the Fremen have, and they're like, oh, maybe, we don't know. And they talk a little bit about that, but so that they get into this little side thing for a second, and then the Duke goes like, let's talk more about the spicing. And so we go into back to the harvest factory. Is replaced with a wing device that's even bigger than the factory. And it's a carry-all, and this is basically a giant, airship that comes in and picks up the harvest factory when a worm is sighted, and they have to pick it up and carry it away.
Like a big bird, but not Big Bird.
Right, exactly. And then from there we go to what's it called? The Orthopters, and they're basically just like
the Orthopters.
They're not like. They're not helicopters, but they're sort of like these winged, like their wings flap.
They look like bugs in the Dave Lynch Dune movie, but the carry-alls are just big thopters.
Yeah, exactly. But the Orthopters are smaller. They're sort of like a more small personnel.
They're like shuttle thopters.
Yeah, right. So we go through all that information, and then he says, let's talk about like our profits and figures and like how much we're going to make on this. And Howard opens his notebook and says, after assessing repairs and operational equipment, we worked out a first estimate of operational costs. It's based naturally on the depreciating figure for clear safety margins. And he starts going into this like mentant trance. He says, under the Harkonnens, maintenance and salaries will be held at to 14%. We'd be lucky to make a 30% at first, with the reinvestment and growth factors including the CHOM percentage and military cost. Our profit margin will be reduced to a very low 6 or 7% until we can replace the worn out equipment. We should be able to boost it up to 12 or 15% where it belongs.
This is what Frank Herbert's taxman told him when he was like, I'm going to write a bunch of books about sand.
And economics.
Yeah. Well, no, he just like every time he went to his taxman was just like, this is what it's going to look like if you don't do a regular job. You're just going to write this book. You're going to have some profits. Maybe it takes off. Maybe it'll get super rich one day, but it's going to look pretty rough the first couple of years. He's like, oh yeah, this will be great for my book. He just like changes the names. Great.
Just change it around. Yeah, exactly. Talking about changing around their plan, the Duke says on Caladan we depended on sea and air power, but here we're going to choose to call it desert power. This may include air power.
Can we get bush power? Come on.
Bush.
I mean, the Australian outback, they call it the bush, and it's basically just desert. Bush power.
That's true. That's true. That's
or,
true.
It's pussy power if you're into like that kind of.
Pussy power! He says the Harkonnens relied on turnover off the planet for some of their key personnel, but he says we don't dare because it would have a lot of provocateurs come on. So basically, they're afraid of like a terrorist element, basically fueled by the Harkonnens or any other enemies. So
Gotta love the frenemies.
Yeah, so we're going to have to be far less profits and reduce harvests until we convert the first 2 seasons should be down from the Harkonnens' average, and so they're like Duke's like, well, that's what we expected, but we have to try to get the Fremen on our side.
And by the 3rd season, it'll turn around just like all the other Star Trek shows.
That's right. So there we go. They're not. It's not looking too good for the business side of things. Not for a while. And what they're afraid is that pretty soon, because things aren't going right, they're going to start dropping off Sardaukar warriors to kind of like push things along, especially if they're not making enough money. So
Keep
basically,
those spy spiders in submission.
Yeah,
Ratings will continue until morale improves.
Yeah, until morale improves, exactly. And so Paul, at this point, looks at his father and looks at Howard and suddenly is conscious of the Mentat's great age, where the old man has served 3 generations of Atreides. And says it shows in the roomy shine of the brown eyes and the cheeks cracked and burned by the exotic weathers, and the round curve of the shoulders, and the thin set of lips with the cranberry-colored stain of the saffo juice. So saffo juice is something the Mentats drink to kind of like make them thinking even faster.
Ooh, speed.
Yeah, basically. But
Liquid
speed.
He's,
and he basically says so much depends on one aged man. So he's like, this can't be good.
It's great. I love how Dune is like it's like we don't need technology to save the world. We need drugs to save the world.
Yeah, I know, right? Use speed.
They abandoned technology and robots and have turned completely to drugs. This is kind of amazing.
Right. Yeah, so pretty interesting right there. And then the Duke says also,
apparently Dune was a very popular book for the DARE program. They didn't recommend that to
read this book. Oh, no, not that one. Don't read
that one. Take a bite out of Dune.
Spice. Drugs.
And George Lucas took this from Dune.
He took drugs from Dune?
Spice.
What spice did he take from Dune?
Spice. Han Solo's a spice smuggler.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. Was he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He made you get spice from Kessel, and he made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
I just thought it was like seasoning.
Oh no, it's drugs. It's drugs in Star Wars and drugs in it's probably how they make death sticks.
Death sticks. So now we go into Duke has this idea to take anybody who has I guess what you want to call ties to the Harkonnens, and you're going to basically just confiscate all their properties. And there's some aggravation about that because Paul doesn't think that's a good idea to do that. And
what do you know, Paul? You're 15.
Yeah, I know exactly. But Gurney doesn't.
Have you been with a woman yet, Paul?
No, not yet. And then we get who walks
just
in.
Dr. UA.
Oh, gross. Then who walks in is Duncan Idaho. And Duncan Idaho starts talking to Duke about what's his experience so far, and that they had some Harkonnens mercenaries disguised as Fremen, and then when we attacked it, they badly wounded one of his Fremen friends, and unfortunately died. But in his death, he gave him a Krista knife, and he's going to unsheath it to show everybody because it's such a rare weapon. And all of a sudden we hear,
"Don't do it!
Keep that blade in its sheath. And who walks in? This man in flowing robes is Stilgar.
And blue eyeballs.
Yeah, so Stilgar is the leader of the Sietch, or the tribe that Duncan Idaho has been kind of embedded with. And this is where we get the whole back and forth of, like, you can't show them this knife weapon because it's basically a sacred weapon. And you just, it's like kind of the idea that even though the Duke wants to see it, and the Duke would, and Idaho wants to, do something to show the Duke this, he can't do this because it's not proper.
Man, we're Shattered Mapes when you need her.
I know.
She's an expedition dump girl.
And then the Duke kind of agrees with Stilgar just to make the peace.
It's just like if this is the way it is on Dune, this is the way it is, by my order.
Yeah, by my order. It's cool. It's cool. We're cool now. We're cool. And then
he'll show me a picture on his iPhone later. Yeah, it'd be fine.
And this is where Stilgar spits on the desk or the table in front of the Duke, and the Duke's kind of like, what? And everyone around him
everyone's
stand
about
up.
to murder Stilgar.
Yeah. And then Duncan goes, no. This is a sign of deep respect and friendship. You know how important water is.
What?
And then
since when?
And then Duncan spits as well. So yeah. And then the Fremen ask Duncan Idaho to join with them and be part of their siege and be in allegiance with them. And he says, "Can I have a dual alliance between you and Duke Leto?" And this is agreed upon.
Can I have an open allegiance where I can, see this lover and this other?
What you do in your time is your time. So that's all agreed upon. So Duncan Idaho now serves Leto and the Sietch with Stilgar. So, and it also mentions Liet again. It says Liet and says there's precedent for this. Liet serves two masters. So we don't really know who Liet is yet. So we'll find out more about Liet later on. So. But he says, our water is yours, Duncan Idaho. Stilgar says, the body of our friends remains with your Duke. His water is Atreides' water. It is a bond between us. So that's all good. And then Stilgar goes, peace out, and he leaves. And
spits again on the floor, and then on the door.
And Idaho is basically told, get all the information you can, make friends, make as many friends you want. We need the Fremen on our side. And so out goes Idaho with all that. So
make sure you don't miss a Orthopter.
So, and then from there, we start talking about these desert botanical testing stations that are scattered around secretly on Arrakis. And the Duke wants to kind of take the equipment from them and use them, but they're basically Shaddam the Fourth's property. And there's if we take that, we could get in trouble. And a lot of crazy things happen in the desert. Weather can destroy things and could be ransacked, but apparently these also have some kind of something sacred for the Fremen. They're attached to these, and that's not clear yet. So, and Paul kind of even says to his father, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we should wait on that. But the Duke says, well, let's just try to figure out where these things are first, so we can have figure out strategically if we can use them.
That way we can make a deal or something later if we need to.
Right. But yeah, so it's very interesting there. And then and from there we jump on to they're talking some more about Gurney's going to go talk to the smugglers and everything else that he has to do. And Duke wants Thufir to set up his command post and communications on the floor that they're at this base. And so everyone's kind of the whole staff meeting's breaking up. And then for the first time, Paul allowed himself to think about the real possibility of defeat, not thinking about it out of fear of because of the warnings such as came from the old Reverend Mother, but facing up to it because of his own assertion of the situation. And this is what he thinks. My father's desperate. Things aren't going well for us at all. And how it, Paul recalls how the old mentat had acted during the conference. Subtle hesitations, signs of unrest. How it was deeply troubled by something. So Paul's like, this ain't going to work out.
It's good, guys.
And then Paul's later on, Paul stares at the place where his father was stood because his father had left. The space had been empty even before the Duke had left the room. And as he recalled the old woman warning, for the father, nothing. And that's how we close off this chapter. Dave, this is a lot of information dump, obviously. The Atreides are kind of like an uphill battle trying to make this deal on Arrakis work. And Paul's kind of seeing like, damn, we got kind of a raw deal.
We got the shaft.
Yeah, and not only that, the Harkonnens have been building up their own spice reserves. So if they do disrupt things, they can use that as to fill in for whatever spice interruptions came on the planet. So they'll be looked at as heroes if they come into this whole thing. So.
Yeah, it's bad news for all the Kaladin boys.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this?
I mean, it's just like such a big information. I mean, it was interesting to hear from the point of view of the father. He's just like really mad, and then like hearing the all the like troops like, oh look, just stop bullshitting. The Duke's around. I was like, yeah. It was just a little bit different after reading some of Leviathan Wakes. Going back
Leviathan Wakes,
that's the first Expanse book. So I've been listening back and forth between Leviathan Wakes and Dune. So it's just a very different style listening to the writing of Frank Herbert versus the style of.
Oh yeah, you're talking something written in 1965 or before, and then something written in 2012.
Yeah. It's very, very different. It's almost jarring going back and forth listening to both books. I mean, these are just like giant information dumps. Like the stories, it's coming, I'm sure. But I mean, it's just a lot of information. I mean, it's interesting because I mean, it's starting to build the backstory, and there's and since the joke didn't land, there's obviously so much more backstory we just don't know.
I'm sure there's humor in there somewhere. I just can't seem to find out where it is.
I just don't know. How many of the books do I have to read before this joke
maybe
is
Kaladin humor is a little different than it is here.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's I don't know. I mean, like, I'm enjoying Dune. I mean, it's interesting, but so far not a whole lot's happened yet. I mean, it makes sense why some of the stuff was cut out in the movie.
Actually, this part was in the movie.
Oh, it was?
It's kind of trimmed down, but it's there. But and it's probably why the movie was not popular.
Let's go over finance reports.
let's do our finance reports. Is right. As you see, this chart here is how little money we'll make.
I mean, it's important to the world, but that's not super important to the movie.
It's a lot of information. It's good to know.
It's like good to know, but it's a mundane for a movie. A movie's got to be more exciting.
And like we get kind of like how the spice is harvested off the planet. You know, we have the harvest factories, we get the carryalls, and we have like the orthopters that kind of like fly around looking for worms. You know, all that stuff is great. You know, like we get kind of the backstory. We also figure out how all this is. How the economics of this whole thing works, kind of like not like on a granular level, but kind of like a broad view.
Yeah, so. It's on a macro level, and we're also seeing like the infighting between the houses. I mean, it's all set up, and I'm sure it's going to be really good setup because I mean, Dune is such a beloved series, and there's so many books, and it's got such a giant lore. I'm excited to get into it more as we go through this book and start maybe going to some of the other books. Not promising we'll do all of them, but maybe a couple. I mean, I want to get into it more and learn more about Dune, and I just really got my fingers crossed that the new movie will be successful and they can maybe make more of them into movies.
Possibly.
If they can, like, you know, they got to nail the first one, though. Because
they definitely got to name it. But they filmed both of them side by side, right? Because the book, I mean, the new movie is kind of the first book broken in two. That's what I heard.
Oh, I mean that would make sense. I mean to do it well. Hopefully they will. I don't know all the I haven't read many of the details in the book. I remember reading that a long time ago, but I don't remember hearing any update on if that was actually the case or not. But I mean, I haven't really heard either way. But I hope that's still true, because that would be nice if it's going to be split into two movies so they can do all. But yeah, I mean, even if it's split into two movies, the first one's really got to stick the landing and be just really great. And I hope it works. I hope it translates this time, because I would love to see the franchise on film expand beyond the first and second book. How about you? What are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, I think this is all very good information, especially for somebody who's not familiar with Dune. A lot of stuff we're getting more information about the sandworms. We're getting information, like I said, about the harvesting of the spice, how kind of like the economics and everything is worked out here between not just the harvesters, but also like we have a smuggling network. We have, the Fremen and how they work into all this stuff. And then we even get our first introduction to Stilgar, the siege leader, and it's just great because we get like a totally different culture where he just spits on the table and everyone's like, "What the fuck?"
Culture shift.
Yeah, so it's cool, and in the chapter before, we get the Duke just kind of just freaked out about his son almost being killed, and just him still trying to process that, and then also the idea that he's still trying.
He's gonna die here,
You're gonna die here, Convenient. But how he's trying to get the spice miners to stay on Arrakis and work for the Atreides instead of just leaving. So,
yeah. I mean, there's a lot going into it. I mean, it's interesting, but it's not like super exciting yet. You know what I mean?
No, there's not a lot of excitement, that's for sure. And that's where I think where the book suffers a lot. I think a lot of people fall off. I would probably think they fall off right about where we're at.
Because it's like reading Numbers or Leviticus in the Bible.
Oh, jeez, all the laws.
The law. It's like you're reading the laws and the genealogies, and it's like, what?
I can't do this. Can we skip ahead a bit? Skip a bit, brother.
It'd be funny if there's a genealogy for Paul Atreides. It's just like all these random names, like one of the books.
I'm sure it's somewhere.
Tracing the Bene Gesserits.
I'm sure it's somewhere written. I'm sure it's written out somewhere. But it's still good, and it's just like I think we got to kind of just like let this happen, and then more things are going to start picking up now after this. There's more that's going to start happening. It's just going to take this is probably maybe the more painstaking kind of chapters, because there's just a lot of information, and you're just like, when's something going to happen? So
I'm going to guess that probably a good third of the book is set up.
Oh yeah, the first third is pure setup. Yeah. And things start happening at the end of the third, but they just start happening.
Yeah, it's very different doing like a book report view of like doing book episodes, or you're only doing a couple of chapters at a time. Because it's like it's moving so slow, but I mean it's still interesting to talk about. There's still stuff to talk about each time, which is really interesting. So I'm definitely having fun with it.
Yeah, for sure.
We hope you guys are too out there. Hope you guys are enjoying our slow burn through Dune.
So guys, if you have different thoughts, if you want to chime in something, maybe we got something wrong, or maybe we overlooked something.
Please let us know. Tell us why that joke is funny.
Please tell us why that joke is funny by Lito. So you can email us at synthaholic@yahoo.com. You can contact us at our Facebook page, Facebook.com/groups/Synthaholics. You can hit us up on Twitter, Synthaholics Duo, and just let us know if there's anything we're missing here. But I think that joke was pretty shitty.
It could use a little bit of work.
Caledon humor. And if the show is something you feel like you could you'd like to support, please go to our Patreon, Patreon.com/Synthaholics. We appreciate anything you could do for us there. And tune in. I think, Dave, we're going to miss a week, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to miss at least a week of Dune, so probably 2 weeks before the next Dune episode.
Right, exactly. I think we're going to miss one in the week just because I'm on vacation.
Holly's on vacation, and you don't want to hear a one-man show.
I don't want to be a one-man band. Yeah.
I want to be a one-man band.
So we will be picking up again, and we'll be talking more. It might be just me and Holly, but we'll see how our things are in after a week. So,
Oh yeah.
all right, guys. Well, hey, thanks so much for listening to us, and as always, the spice must flow.
Oh, all over your head, neck, and chest, yeah.
Oh, Jesus. All right.
Dune.
Dune.
Miles aside of Mars. Well, McCoy, my boy, come mix me a drink. Before the night's over, I'll puke in the sink, and we'll cry till we laugh, and we'll both shit our pants. You're the best drinking friend I ever had.